Welcome to On the Record, Updates and Echoes, a podcast by the Pocahontas Record-Democrat. I'm Erin Summers. We're sponsored this month by the Pocahontas Area Community Fine Arts Boosters. The Pocahontas City Council had an emotional and I think probably productive meeting last week talking about the proposed splash pad. Long story short, and you can read the whole long story in this week's paper, the three council members who were there and the mayor gave Hudson's crew a list of things that they'll need to do to get construction started this spring. There were also members of the Parks Board there working on what they need to do to approve the site for the splash pad. Mayor Christy Seiler set some tough deadlines. She wanted to get things wrapped up by April 1st. These projects can be really hard to do because government is full of red tape. We all know that. So watching them work through it, even though it wasn't easy, was kind of interesting, I thought. And I really appreciated Rick Weingarten's comment the most. Stop pointing fingers and fix the problem. Fonda officials drew a line in the sand about law enforcement funding at their March meeting. City Clerk Angela Dutzman had to share that stance with the Pocahontas County Board of Supervisors at their meeting last week. Basically, the Fonda Council, which has been paying for law enforcement services from the Sheriff's Office, said they're done paying unless every city in the county is also making some kind of payment. The problem is, the supervisors and the county auditor tried to explain, Lorenz and Pocahontas still have police departments and police officers, and they really aren't obligated to come up with extra funds for the sheriff's office. Now, the smaller cities are different, but as officials from those small towns pointed out, they're kind of out of money too. And $500 from a few cities will put some skin in the game, but it really doesn't cover the sheriff's office's costs. The supervisors didn't make any decisions. They're still working with officials in all of the cities within Pocahontas County, and you can read more about that conversation in this week's paper. About once a month, I try to look through the most recent court filings to see what kind of shenanigans or worse Pocahontas County folks are up to. One of my coworkers last week took a look at one of the headlines about a public intoxication arrest in Lorenz and asked me why that was even news. It's a good question. Simply put, a few things make a crime story worth writing about. One is whether the crime is a higher level felony. Those are pretty much always news. Then there are cases like this one that I might not have written about, except that the public intoxication was in a pretty public place, an apartment complex parking lot, which means there were probably people looking out their windows and kind of saw the whole thing go down. Plus, the details were unusual. A guy calls the cops and calls the sheriff's office in another county to complain about his neighbor allegedly threatening him, but in the end, it's the guy who makes the phone call that gets arrested. I have a few court and crime stories in this week's papers, and you should always check those out. A new arrival at the hospital means new to them equipment in Fonda. Pocahontas Community Hospital received its newest ambulance this month, and it's the first one purchased with the money raised by the EMS Essential Service Levy. That's a big deal, and it's been really neat to have covered this story from the very beginning when county and hospital and EMS officials all came together to talk about how they could raise money to keep ambulances running here, all the way through to the end where we see this first ambulance show up. Those early meetings were held by Zoom because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The new ambulance is equipped with the kind of features that first responders learned about and implemented because of the pandemic. It all just feels very full circle. You'll want to check out that article and check out the new graphics on the ambulance. Planting is coming soon, whether we're ready or not. We've got a roundup of ag-related news and ads from a number of local agricultural businesses on our annual Ag Day pages. Check them out in the Record-Democrat this week. The PAC Show Choir and Jazz Band took to the stage last weekend for a Kaleidoscope in Blue. I photographed the show during dress rehearsal and heard some great music. You'll see a photo collage in this week's Record-Democrat and Lorenz Sun. You know, dress rehearsals exist to work out the kinks of the show, and this one was definitely no different. At one point during a solo, Will Lawson's microphone stopped working, and while he was waiting for choral director Leah Rosado to troubleshoot the problem, turns out it was a dead battery, Will improvised a little, singing about the dead mic and strumming a few chords. It's really the sign of a true professional. In sports, the PAC girls track team competed at an indoor meet in Ames last week. Haley Hosworth had the top finish for the Indians that day, coming in second in the shot put with a toss of 38 feet 7 inches. More from the meet results will be in this week's paper. Basketball player Chloe Mefford was named to the Iowa Girls Coaches Association's Class 2A All Northwest District team. And over at Newell Fonda, girls basketball coach Dick Jungers was named the Class 1A Coach of the Year by the Iowa Girls Coaches Association. Ellie Sievers and Quinn Sievers were both named to the 25-26 Class 1A girls basketball All-State First Team, and they, along with Riley Hograve, were named to the IGCA Class 1A girls basketball All-Northwest District Team. Congratulations to everybody, and those titles were a mouthful. Thanks again to the PAC Fine Arts Boosters for sponsoring us this month. Next up, we have the Echoes portion of the show, where I share some weather news from more than a few decades ago. Welcome to the Echoes portion of the podcast. I'm Erin Summers, and this is Sandy Rutherford. We're recording on Friday. We're supposed to get some snow this weekend. So I thought it was good timing when I came across an article from, let's see, what was the date? April 3rd, 1941, that referenced quite a bit of severe weather in Pocahontas in 1940 and 1941. The article talks first about the severe weather and shows that there was a local politician trying to do something not about the weather. We were not controlling the clouds or anything, but trying to get the federal government actually to do more to alert folks to bad weather. So the headline is, Senator Shaw asks probe on storm warning, introduces resolution in Iowa Senate asking congressional investigation. And that is a very awkward headline. It's definitely a thing when newspapers were being laid out with linotype and they would just drop as many words as they could. So awkward, but
very long.
Very long. It was a one column article. It was kind of squished together. I was like, this is weird, but I get what they're saying. So the article starts, there is an old saying that everybody talks about the weather, but no one does anything about it. But the Iowa Senate took steps to do something about it one day last week when Senator A.J. Shaw of Pocahontas introduced a resolution with reference to the alleged failure of the Weather Bureau to broadcast storm warnings prior to the disastrous storms in Iowa on November 11th, 1940 and March 15th, 1941. So again, this was published April 3rd. So within 2 weeks of this storm, the Iowa legislature was going, hey, this is a problem. So I thought that was pretty fast.
That's very fast, especially for government.
Right. So the article goes on to say, the Congress of the United States is urged in the resolution to provide for investigation of the weather and crop service as may be necessary to place the blame, if any, for such failure, and that it further be requested to enact such legislation as may be necessary in the future to prevent the repetition of failures to give adequate warning of dangerous storms and weather conditions to the end that human lives and property may be protected from unnecessary loss and destruction. It's a lot of words. We want to blame somebody, and so we're going to blame Congress and we're going to blame the federal government. I did look it up. There were some weather stations already in existence, and definitely more were placed around the country after World War II. A lot of old radar towers got relocated across the United States. So I don't know exactly what they were working with in 1940 and 1941, but they certainly thought they could have predicted these storms or sent out some kind of warning. So I thought that was interesting. The article continues. Senator Shaw asked that a copy of the resolution be forwarded to each Iowa member of Congress. Senator Shaw filed in the state Senate the following resolution. And I apologize in advance. Resolution words are not normal people words, and the way these sentences are constructed can be a little difficult, but it gives a lot of interesting information. Whereas the United States Weather and Crop Service, with federal funds augmented by state appropriations, maintains weather observation stations throughout Iowa, Minnesota, and Dakota and other states in the Northwest, and whereas such stations are presumed to be maintained for the protection and benefit of persons and property, and whereas on November 11th, 1940, a wind of hurricane violence accompanied by snow and cold swept across Iowa, destroying numerous human lives and millions of dollars worth of livestock and poultry, all or most of which could have been prevented by timely warnings, and whereas on or about March 15, 1941, another devastating hurricane accompanied by snow and intense cold took a toll on more than 50 human lives in the states of Minnesota and North Dakota. And whereas present communication lines, both wire and wireless, are such as to facilitate advanced adequate warnings of such deadly storms, and whereas if such weather observation stations are to be of value, such warnings should should be sure and adequate, and whereas it does not appear that any adequate warning was given before either of said storms, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate, the House concurring, that the Congress of the United States be requested to provide for such investigations of such weather and crop service as may be necessary to place blame, if any, for such failure, and that it be further requested to enact such legislation as may be necessary in the future to prevent a repetition of failures to give adequate warnings of dangerous storms and weather conditions to the end that human lives and property may be protected from unnecessary loss and destruction. There's a lot of words.
It was a lot of words.
Did anything stand out about those descriptions to you?
I found it fascinating they called them hurricanes.
Right? That was what I had noticed too. I was like, we're calling them hurricanes? I feel like maybe in the last couple of years, I have heard a couple of snowstorms being referred to as like inland winter hurricanes or sort of described like that. But I don't feel like that's a very common description.
No, not at all. I don't know that I've ever heard winter storm and hurricane.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. So that was the 1941 story. So, I mean, I couldn't let it sit there. I had to go back to November 1940. So November 14th, 1940, the top headline was Worst Snowstorm in Years Sweeps County. And I'm going to show it to you because the design is one of those really awful 1940 designs where there's a headline across the top, but the article is only on the far right column underneath. And there are 1 million headlines on that front page. So there's actually two snow stories. So there's that one, and then there's one right next to it about the pheasants, which I will mention in just a minute. So
yeah, because it's got like a headline and like a sub-headline that's not really that headline.
Which goes with that.
Over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do not really like reading newspapers from the 1940 that don't know to put their headlines over the article, but that is really just a digression for newspaper people. So I'm going to read a little bit of this because this was some good reporting, I thought. Pocahontas County received its first taste of winter Monday when the weather suddenly changed from a long spell of Indian summer to frigid winter, bringing one of the worst November snowstorms in many years. When residents of the county retired Sunday night, the temperature was warm and a light rain was falling. But when they got up Monday morning, they were greeted with a raging blizzard. So not a hurricane here, it was a blizzard, which was swept into Iowa by a howling 50-mile-an-hour gale. The mercury had skidded from 46 degrees down to 15 degrees during the night, turning the rain into sleet, then snow. The storm, catching local residents almost entirely unprepared, raged with fury throughout the day, swirling the estimated 5 inches of snow through the air and into drifts. Visibility was reduced to less than 50 feet. Nearly all roads in this section were blocked. Hundreds of cars were marooned on highways and streets as motorists attempted to carry out their plans for the day. Several minor crashes were reported as snow-blinded drivers bumped into stalled cars. Garages did a flourishing business Tuesday and Wednesday. The wind abated early Tuesday morning, leaving the snow a knee-deep blanket in open spaces. The storm caused much damage to property in northwest Iowa. Many cattle, sheep, turkeys, and birds perished. A number of cattle in the vicinity of Pocahontas were victims of the storm when the wet, swirling snow froze over their heads and nostrils and prevented them from breathing, which caused the animals to die from suffocation. Hunters reported thousands of pheasants dying in a similar manner. The Hakes poultry firm at Lorenz reported several thousand turkeys frozen to death. The Woods hatchery of Rolfe lost 1,900 turkeys. Many large turkey flocks in northwest Iowa were said to have been completely destroyed by the storm. The skies were clear Tuesday, but the weather was still bitter cold. Snowplows were clearing highways in the county, and by Wednesday, all of the main traveled roads were passable. Street Commissioner Ed Hudick put in a busy day Tuesday, clearing a path for cars to travel on Pocahontas' streets. Many old-timers here said that Monday's blizzard was the worst they had ever seen.
Wow.
5 inches.
Yeah.
Of snow.
It's a lot of snow, but I love all of their adjectives.
Yes.
All of the colorful descriptors.
I don't know, the line about the garages doing a flourishing business really stuck out to me. I just think it's really a really well-written description.
Or like how the mercury skidded.
Yes, yeah, that was a good one too. You know, sometimes, right now, the way that you write a newspaper story is I would need to quote so many people to do this.
Right.
And it's this a whole story without a quote, and that you don't doubt any of it. It's not
no.
conjecture. Like, he's got all the numbers. I just thought it was a really good description. I also like that line at the end. Many old timers have said Mondays was the worst blizzard they had ever seen. Was it really, or was it just like this was the most recent one?
Yeah.
But it does sound like it was really bad. Like, all the livestock that died and
Yeah.
thousands of pheasants freezing to death. That's weird.
Yeah.
So it just must have been really, really bad.
Really cold.
I couldn't find anything in the Record-Democrat about the 1941 storm, although in that resolution, it says that it was worse in the Dakotas and Minnesota. So maybe it wasn't so bad here, but just collectively they were kind of addressing both of them. But anyway, I don't know. Like, and then I just had another note about him calling them hurricanes and maybe polar vortex. I guess polar vortex is more when the cold weather comes down.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But
I think so.
Yeah. So snowstorms. You have a snowstorm story.
Well, I mean, it's funny to me that like the old timers say that where usually you hear about it was worse when we were little.
Yeah.
There was so much more snow when we were little. But yeah, so I don't necessarily remember it because it was like, I think it was the winter, like Christmas of '83. So I would have been about 4. My brother would have been just a few months old because he was born in August. And my dad was farrowing pigs at my grandparents' house. They lived a couple miles from us. So my dad told my mom, you either load up the kids and come with me and we spend Christmas at their house, or you're stuck here by yourself.
Right.
So of course they loaded up in the truck and did the couple of miles to my grandparents' house. And they tell me they went through a drift on Highway 4 right before C49. They plowed through this drift and then turned onto C49, and they got stuck just at the edge of the gravel road, and it's just a few yards to get to my grandparents' house from there. So evidently they took me out and put me down on the road to start getting my brother and everything else out of the truck, and I took off in the wrong direction.
Oh no.
In this snowstorm. But they caught me, we went back. But they say that the next day, as the plows were clearing things, that drift they plowed through on Highway 4 had a car buried on the other side.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah, it could have been really bad.
Could have been really bad.
But Santa showed up at my grandma's house and everything was good.
Everything's good. So
but
yeah.
And I remember having so many mountains of snow, and there was a lot more snow when I was little.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that too. Even from Indiana, I feel like there was more when I was a kid than what my parents get now. But
yeah.
So I don't know if by the time you hear this, if we will be digging out from a big snowstorm. I'm kind of hoping that it misses us, but you just never know. But I thought it was really interesting to read about some other March and November snowstorms, which I feel like is when we got snow this winter. We had them in November, December, and nothing in January.
Yeah,
so
it's been a weird winter.
Thank you all for listening. We will be back again next week. And thanks again to the Pocahontas Area Community School Fine Arts Boosters for sponsoring our podcast for the month of March. Have a great day.